I walked into my own engagement party and found my fiancé kissing my sister. But that wasn't even the worst part of that night. My name is Rebecca. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. For the past 3 years, I thought I was living the perfect life. I had a successful career as a marketing director, a beautiful apartment downtown, and I was engaged to Connor, the man I believed was my soulmate. We met at a conference in Atlanta, and from the first conversation, everything felt right. He was charming, ambitious, successful. My family adored him, especially my younger sister, Maya. Maya and I had always been close. She was 25, still finding her way in life, and I had always been her protector, her guide, her biggest supporter. When she moved to Charleston last year to be closer to me, I was thrilled. I helped her find an apartment, introduced her to my friends, even got her a job interview at a firm I knew. Connor seemed happy about it too. He said it was great that I had family nearby, especially with the wedding planning ahead. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more real-life experiences like mine, please hit that subscribe button. We're working towards 17,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Just click that red subscribe button right now. The engagement party was my mother's idea. She flew in from Boston with my father, and they rented out this beautiful venue overlooking the harbor. There were fairy lights everywhere, tables covered in white linen, champagne flowing. About 80 people were invited, friends from college, colleagues, family members I hadn't seen in years. I spent weeks planning every detail with my mom and Maya. I remember feeling so grateful, so blessed, thinking this was the beginning of my happily ever after. I wore a cream-colored dress that night, elegant but not too formal. Connor looked handsome in his navy suit. We arrived together, greeted guests, smiled for what felt like 1,000 photos. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. About an hour into the party, Connor said he needed to step outside to take a work call. I didn't think anything of it. He was always working, always networking. That's one of the things I admired about him. Then I noticed Maya was gone too. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. There were 80 people there. Of course, they weren't both in the same room at the same time. I mingled with my college friends, caught up with my favorite aunt, danced with my father. But something felt off. That instinct that women have, that knowing in your gut that something isn't right, it started whispering to me. I went looking for Connor. I checked the main hall, the bathrooms, asked a few people if they'd seen him. Someone said they thought he went toward the back terrace, the one that overlooked the marina. It was quieter back there, away from the party. I walked through the French doors, the sound of laughter and music fading behind me. That's when I saw them. Connor and Maya standing in the shadows near the railing, locked in an embrace that was anything but innocent. His hands were in her hair, her arms were wrapped around his neck. They were kissing with an intensity that made my stomach drop. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This was familiar. This was practiced. This was something that had been happening for a while. I must have made a sound because they broke apart. Maya's face went white. Connor's expression cycled through shock, then guilt, then something that looked almost like relief. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was the truth finally coming to light. Please, if this story is resonating with you, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We're so close to reaching 17,000 subscribers, and clicking that subscribe button helps us continue sharing these real stories. Your support makes a real difference. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. Connor took a step toward me, his hand outstretched, already starting with the excuses. Rebecca, it's not what you think. But Maya, my baby sister, the person I had protected my entire life, she just looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "I'm so sorry. I love him." Those 4 words shattered something inside me. I love him. Not, it was a mistake. Not, I don't know what happened. She loved him, my fiancé. And suddenly, everything from the past year started to make sense. The way Connor always suggested inviting Maya to our dinners. How he insisted we help her move into her apartment, spent an entire Saturday building her furniture while I was at a work conference. The times he'd come home smelling like her perfume, the vanilla scent she always wore. And he'd explain it away, saying they'd run into each other at the coffee shop near his office. I turned around and walked back into the party. People were laughing, dancing, celebrating a wedding that was never going to happen. My mother was talking to Connor's parents. My father was giving a toast I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. I grabbed my purse from our table and left through the front entrance. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just got in my car and drove. I ended up at a 24-hour diner in North Charleston, the kind of place with red vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting that's too bright. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and tried to figure out what to do next. My phone was exploding with calls and texts. Connor, Maya, my mother, friends asking where I went. I turned it off. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes named Donna, refilled my coffee even though the cup was still full. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Honey, whatever it is, the sun's still gonna rise tomorrow." I burst into tears right there in the booth. She brought me napkins and sat across from me for a minute, just being present. Sometimes strangers are the only ones who can offer comfort when your whole world falls apart. If you're still watching, I really appreciate you being here with me through this. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Getting to 17,000 subscribers is our goal, and it only takes a second to click that button. Let's build this community together. I stayed at that diner until sunrise. Then I drove to my parents' hotel. My mother opened the door in her bathrobe, her face a mixture of worry and confusion. "Rebecca, everyone's been looking for you. What happened? Connor said you got sick and left, but..." I told her everything. I watched her face change as she processed it. The denial first, then the anger, then something that looked like guilt. That's when she told me something that made everything even worse. She said, "I knew something was going on. I saw them together last month when I visited. They were at a restaurant on King Street, holding hands. I convinced myself I was seeing things, that it couldn't be what it looked like. I didn't want to believe it, and I didn't want to hurt you if I was wrong." My own mother had seen them together and said nothing. I felt betrayed all over again. By Connor, by Maya, and now by my mother, who had chosen silence over protecting me. My father, who had been listening from the bedroom, came out and said we needed to confront them together as a family. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted to disappear. But he insisted. We met at my apartment that afternoon, Connor, Maya, my parents, and me. It was the most uncomfortable hour of my life. Connor tried to explain that he never meant to hurt me, that what started with Maya was unexpected, that he'd been trying to end it but couldn't. Maya cried and apologized over and over, saying she never wanted to fall for him, that she tried to stay away but the feelings were too strong. She said they'd been seeing each other for almost 8 months. 8 months. While I was picking out wedding dresses, while we were sending save the dates, while I was planning our future together. For 8 months, the two people I trusted most in the world had been lying to my face every single day. I asked Maya why. Why him? Why now? Why didn't she just tell me she had feelings for him before I got engaged? She said she didn't realize it at first. That they'd been texting as friends, then meeting for coffee, and by the time she understood what was happening, Connor had already proposed to me. She said she thought she could ignore it, that it would go away. But it didn't. It got stronger. Remember to hit that subscribe button if this story is keeping you engaged. We're building towards 17,000 subscribers, and every single person who clicks subscribe helps us reach that goal. Your click matters. Connor said he realized about 6 months ago that he had feelings for Maya too, but he didn't know how to tell me. He said he loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore. That phrase haunts me still. He said Maya understood him in ways I didn't, that they connected on a different level. He made it sound like I was the problem, like I had somehow failed to be enough for him. I asked him to leave. I asked Maya to leave. I told them both I never wanted to see them again. My father escorted them out. My mother stayed with me while I cried for hours. She kept apologizing for not saying something sooner, and I didn't have the energy to tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. Nothing about any of this was okay. The next few weeks were a blur. I canceled the wedding, sent back gifts, made awkward phone calls to vendors. I lost the deposit on almost everything. I didn't care. I took time off work, barely left my apartment. Friends would visit, bring food I didn't eat, try to cheer me up with stories and distractions. Nothing helped. I felt hollow. Then, about a month after the engagement party, something happened that changed everything again. I got a call from Connor's mother, Patricia. She asked if we could meet for lunch. I almost said no, but something in her voice made me agree. We met at a quiet restaurant in Mount Pleasant, and she looked tired, older than I remembered. Patricia told me that she knew about Connor and Maya. She'd known for months. But there was more. She told me that Connor had done this before. In his last serious relationship, he'd cheated with his girlfriend's best friend. That relationship ended the same way, with him claiming he'd fallen in love with someone else, that the connection was too strong to ignore. Patricia said she'd hoped he'd changed, that with me it would be different. But clearly it wasn't. She said, "Rebecca, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to blame yourself. This is who Connor is. He gets bored, he chases the excitement of something new, and he justifies it by calling it love. Maya is just the current version of a pattern that will probably repeat itself with her too." If you're finding value in this story and the lessons within it, please take a moment to subscribe. Clicking that subscribe button helps us grow towards 17,000 subscribers and allows us to keep sharing authentic stories like this one. Her words should have made me feel better, but they just made me feel foolish. I'd been so blind. I'd ignored little signs, red flags that seemed insignificant at the time. The way Connor always needed validation, how he'd flirt just a little too much with waitresses and bartenders, calling it just being friendly. How he'd sometimes compare me to his ex, subtle comments about how she was more spontaneous or adventurous. I'd brushed it all off as insecurity on my part. I thanked Patricia for telling me, and I went home and cried again. Not for Connor, not anymore. But for the version of myself who had believed in the fairy tale, for the naive trust I'd had in people I loved. About 2 months later, Maya showed up at my apartment. I hadn't spoken to her since that day. She'd texted a few times, tried calling, but I never responded. Seeing her standing at my door, looking thin and exhausted, stirred up all the anger I'd been trying to process in therapy. She said she needed to tell me something. I let her in, more out of morbid curiosity than forgiveness. We sat on opposite ends of my couch, the space between us feeling like an ocean. Maya told me that she and Connor had broken up, that he'd started acting distant, spending time with a new coworker, a woman named Ashley. She said she confronted him and he admitted he'd been having feelings for Ashley, that things with Maya weren't the same anymore. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the irony. Maya had destroyed our relationship for a man who had now done the exact same thing to her. She looked at me with desperate eyes and said, "You were right about him. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything for someone who wasn't worth it." Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into the role of protective older sister. But I couldn't. The wound was still too fresh, too deep. I told her I appreciated her telling me, but I wasn't ready to forgive her. I said maybe someday, but not now. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and left. Take a second to subscribe to our channel if you're still with me. We're working hard to reach 17,000 subscribers, and your support by clicking that subscribe button means we can continue creating content that tells real, raw stories like this one. That conversation with Maya opened something in me. I realized I'd been waiting for some grand apology, some moment where everything would make sense and I could move on. But life doesn't work that way. Betrayal doesn't come with a neat resolution. Sometimes people who hurt us suffer consequences, and sometimes that doesn't make us feel any better. I threw myself into work, took on bigger projects, stayed late at the office. I started going to the gym, not because I wanted to look good for someone else, but because I needed an outlet for all the anger and hurt I was carrying. I made new friends, took a pottery class, booked a solo trip to Colorado that my therapist said would be good for me. I was doing all the things you're supposed to do after a breakup, but inside, I still felt broken. Then 6 months after the engagement party, I ran into someone from my past. His name was Nathan, and we'd dated briefly in college before going our separate ways. He'd moved back to Charleston for work, and we literally bumped into each other at a bookstore downtown. We got coffee, caught up, and there was something easy about being around him. No pressure, no expectations, Just genuine conversation with someone who knew me before all the drama. Nathan and I started hanging out as friends. He knew about what had happened with Connor and Maya through mutual friends, but he never brought it up unless I did. He made me laugh again, reminded me that not all men were like Connor. We'd go to concerts, try new restaurants, take walks along the Battery. It felt safe. One night, about 8 months after everything fell apart, Nathan and I were having dinner at his place. He'd cooked this elaborate meal, and we were drinking wine and talking about everything and nothing. At some point, the conversation shifted, and he said, "Rebecca, I need to tell you something. I've had feelings for you since we reconnected, maybe even before, back in college. But I don't want to pressure you or complicate your healing. I just needed you to know. If this story is touching you or making you think, please consider subscribing. We're so close to 17,000 subscribers, and clicking that button helps us build a community where people can share and connect over real experiences." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was terrified. The idea of being vulnerable again, of trusting someone with my heart after it had been so completely shattered, felt impossible. But another part of me, a part that had been slowly healing, wanted to try. Nathan represented something different, something real and steady. He'd never been anything but honest with me. I told him I had feelings for him too, but I was scared. He said we could take it as slow as I needed, that there was no rush. We kissed that night, and it felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been missing. Dating Nathan was different than dating Connor. There was no game playing, no wondering where I stood. He was consistent, communicative, present. He met my friends and they loved him. I met his family and felt welcomed. But even as things got more serious, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for him to betray me the way Connor had. My therapist said it was normal, that trust issues after betrayal could take years to work through. About a year after the engagement party, almost to the day, I got a message from Connor. He said he wanted to apologize properly, that he'd been in therapy, and realized how much he'd hurt me. He said he took full responsibility for his actions and understood if I never wanted to speak to him again, but he needed me to know he was sorry. I showed the message to Nathan. He said it was my decision how to respond, that he trusted me either way. I thought about it for a few days and then I wrote back. I said I accepted his apology, that I'd forgiven him not for his sake but for mine, that holding on to anger was exhausting and I was choosing to let it go. I said I hoped he'd learned from what happened and would treat people better going forward. Then I blocked his number. Maya and I had started texting occasionally, short messages, nothing deep, mostly checking in on holidays or sending memes. It wasn't the relationship we used to have, and maybe it never would be. But it was something. My therapist said forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to the way things were. It means releasing the hold that hurt has on you. Please help us reach our goal of 17,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button now. Your support allows us to keep sharing stories that matter, stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. One night, about 14 months after everything happened, Maya called me crying. She'd found out that Connor and Ashley had gotten engaged. She was devastated, not because she wanted him back, but because it confirmed that what Patricia had told me was true. That Connor had a pattern, and Maya had just been another chapter in it. She'd given up her relationship with me for something that was never going to last. I met her for coffee the next day. We talked for hours, really talked, for the first time since that terrible night. She told me how guilty she'd felt, how she'd lost other friendships over what happened, how our parents had been disappointed in her. She said she understood if I never fully trusted her again, but she wanted to try to rebuild what we'd lost. I told her I didn't know if we could ever be as close as we were before, that the betrayal had changed me, changed how I saw her. But I said I was willing to try, slowly. She cried and thanked me, said she'd do whatever it took to earn back my trust. That was 6 months ago. Maya and I have dinner once a month now. Sometimes it's easy. We laugh and fall into old patterns. Sometimes it's hard, and there are awkward silences filled with everything we're not saying. My relationship with my mother has healed too, though I made it clear that if she ever kept something like that from me again, there would be serious consequences. Nathan and I have been together for almost 18 months now. He's patient with my triggers, understanding when I have moments of doubt or fear. He's met my family, and while things are sometimes tense when Maya is around, everyone's trying. He asked me to move in with him last month. I said I needed to think about it, and he said take all the time I need. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. The betrayal changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more cautious now, slower to trust, more protective of my heart. But I'm also stronger. I've learned that I can survive heartbreak, that I don't need someone else to complete me, that my worth isn't determined by whether or not someone chooses to be faithful. Before we finish, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. We're working towards 17,000 subscribers, and every click helps us reach that milestone. Join our community by hitting that subscribe button. Sometimes I think about that night at the engagement party, how different my life might be if I hadn't walked out to that terrace, if I hadn't seen them together. Would Connor and Maya have eventually told me? Would they have let me walk down the aisle living a lie? I'll never know. But I do know that as painful as that moment was, it saved me from something worse, from a marriage built on deception, from a sister who valued her feelings over our bond, from a future that was never really mine. What I'm left with now is a choice. I can say yes to Nathan's invitation to move in together, take that leap of faith and trust that not everyone will hurt me the way Connor and Maya did. Or I can keep my distance, protect myself, keep living independently to ensure I never feel that vulnerable again. My therapist says there's no wrong answer, that I need to do what feels right for me. But here's what I keep coming back to. Connor didn't just betray me. He stole something from me. He took my ability to trust freely, to love without fear, to believe that people are who they say they are. And if I let that theft define the rest of my life, if I let what he did keep me from being open and vulnerable with Nathan, then Connor wins. He gets to control my future even though he's not in it. Maya is trying to rebuild our relationship, and I genuinely believe she's remorseful. But can you ever really trust someone again after they've proven they're capable of that level of betrayal? My parents say family is family, that we have to find a way forward. My friends are split. Some say once a betrayer, always a betrayer. Others say people can change, that she was young and made a terrible mistake. As for Nathan, he's everything Connor wasn't. But I catch myself sometimes, looking for signs that he's hiding something, that there's another woman somewhere, that history is about to repeat itself. That's not fair to him. He's never given me a reason to doubt him. But trauma doesn't care about fairness. It whispers lies in your ear at 3 a.m, tells you everyone will eventually leave, that you're not enough. So I'm standing at this crossroads. Do I move forward with Nathan? Risk my heart again? Choose to believe that what happened with Connor was the exception, not the rule? Do I let Maya fully back into my life? Accept that people make terrible choices but can genuinely regret them and change? Or do I protect myself, keep everyone at arm's length, never fully let anyone in again? The truth is, I don't have the answer yet. Some days I wake up feeling brave and ready to trust again. Other days the fear is overwhelming and I want to run from anything that could hurt me. I'm doing the work in therapy, trying to heal, but healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated, and some days feel like starting over. What would you do in my place? Would you take the risk with Nathan? Or would the fear of being betrayed again be too much? Would you forgive Maya and try to rebuild your relationship? Or are some betrayals too deep to recover from? I really want to know what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me about your experiences with betrayal and how you moved forward, or if you did. Let's talk about this together, because I truly believe that sharing our stories is how we heal and help each other through the hardest moments of our lives.